Hello and welcome back to the Concept Checkup. The point of Concept Checkup is to dive into the Warframe forums, look for a community-made Warframe concept, and talk about it. For the purpose of Concept Checkup, I will use my custom-built evaluating method known as AS. Without further ado, let's begin the checkup. For today's checkup we have Nzeru, the neural Warframe. Nzeru was created by Warframe on the Warframe forums, and is designed to be a support Warframe, but without the traditional shields and heals that you'd find on a frame like Oberon or Harrow. Nyx can already be considered to be the neural Warframe, but the concept creator himself has stated that Nzeru is meant to be more defensively oriented, compared to Nyx's kit, making her be more of a killing through mind control kind of frame. Nzeru possesses above average health, average shields, below average armor, average energy capacity, and an above average sprint speed. Nzeru's sprint speed puts her on the same level as Loki and Loki Prime, meaning that Nzeru's mobility makes her the fastest running support frame of them all. Currently Nzeru does not have a passive. Nzeru's first ability is Signal Block. Nzeru targets a single enemy, with a small AO. If the enemy is unalerted, they will lose sight and hearing, thus remaining unalerted for the duration, no matter what. If the enemy is alerted, their accuracy is reduced but melee power is increased. Affected enemies also have a chance of swapping to melee instead. Signal Block is a weird first ability, given how the chance of disarmament reminds me of Loki and Titania. Signal Block is bad not because it deals 0 damage, but because it's the kind of ability that feels like it would do little to help the team, if at all. 10% lowered accuracy will do almost nothing to keep enemies under control, and even if it's in a AO, 10% is still too low of a base value to do anything meaningful. By comparison, EMP Ore has a higher value against Corpus, and it's just an Aura mod. Titania's Tribute has a greater effect against enemy accuracy, and it lasts longer as well. I assume that Signal Block is affected by power strength, because otherwise making enemies have 10% lower accuracy and 30% greater melee damage doesn't seem worth it. It doesn't matter if Signal Block has a high chance of an enemy being disarmed upon missing. Having 90% accuracy instead of 100% accuracy is essentially negligible. Nzeru's second ability is Network. Upon activation, a targeted enemy is turned into a living web, causing that enemy to begin linking to other nearby enemies. All linked enemies become highlighted and targetable through all terrain, granting Nzeru and her squad massively increased power range. Network is an interesting one. Although it too does not deal damage on its own like Signal Block, Network is the first ability I've seen that artificially increases the range of a team's abilities while at the same time making enemies easier to spot. Granted, Network only marks enemies in game and not on the minimap, but to have the opportunity to use an ability such as Volt's Shock or Mace's Peacemaker from distances not thought possible would be something I'd like to see, especially for an ability as innovative as this one. Nzeru's third ability is Serenity. All enemies within range are pacified, resulting in mechanical enemies becoming inactive and living enemies become docile. If non-alerted enemies are affected by Serenity, they become unable to see Nzeru and her allies. All enemies not affected by Serenity attack those that are. Serenity is a bit of a funny ability, on account of how its description literally says floods organic enemies with feel-good neurochemicals. By the suggested effects, Serenity causes all enemy activity to cease for a limited amount of time, and those enemies that aren't touched by Serenity are forced into attacking their allies. In other words, press 3 to make everything that isn't a nullifier stop doing everything, whatever isn't in range is confused into attacking allies. I'd consider Serenity a strangely strong ability, given that it literally stops enemies from fighting you at the push of a button, albeit with a set range. On top of that, whatever isn't in range is still forced into attacking its allies, meaning that Serenity is essentially a hard freeze combined with a confusion. Nzeru's fourth ability is Somatic Link. Nzeru spawns an invisible and invulnerable avatar that can possess up to 4 enemies at once, except for nullifiers. Nzeru can cycle between which enemy she wishes to control. In addition, Nzeru herself is immobilized when Somatic Link is active, and 25% of all damage taken by an enemy under the effects of Somatic Link is also taken by Nzeru. Somatic Link is basically Nyx's mind control, but on steroids. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. Having up to 4 enemies under your control at once can be a game changer, depending on the limitations of what enemies can be dominated. However, Nzeru is not protected when using Somatic Link, meaning that damage vulnerability forces Nzeru to find a safe place to take cover in before casting Somatic Link. Obviously there's also the issue of designing an ability that allows the player to swap between up to 4 enemies, which could each be doing something completely different in a totally different room. Regardless, here are Nzeru's scores. Albeit some interesting abilities that feel as if they've been spliced together from other existing Warframe's powers, Nzeru would be a decent concept if severe modifications to her design were made. For my personal thoughts, I think that besides an added passive, Nzeru would be better off if signal block had effects more desirable to use rather than being a straight-up enemy buff and minor debuff, as well as if Serenity were toned down to not be an overall everything stops moving at the push of a button power. I'm perfectly fine with a concept that shares a similar design with an existing Warframe so long as the kit is unique enough to differentiate it. For the most part, I like Nzeru, but she could use some work. Thank you for watching.